This summer, we are traveling through a worship series that has us exploring a different national park or monument each week. We're looking at what makes each holy space unique, as well as what we might learn from it to inform and enrich our lives. Today's focus is on Yosemite National Park in what is now California, and our theme is trust. As we celebrate the sacredness of our preserved lands, we also need to acknowledge the sacredness of these places to the first people who lived here, as well as the injustices that caused great harm. People have been living in the Yosemite area for as long as 8,000 years. We know very little about its first residents, but archaeological evidence has given us insight into how the earliest people ground seeds on small flat stones and hunted using spears. Yosemite Valley came to be called Ahwahnee, meaning gaping mouth-like place. The people who lived here called themselves Ahwahnee. They were mostly comprised of Southern Sierra Miwok Nation, but the area was home to 6 other Native American tribes: the Bishop Paiute Tribe, Bridgeport Indian Colony, the Mono Lake Kutsaduka'a Tribe, North Fork Ranchero of Mono Indians of California, Picayune Rancheria of Chukchansky Indians, and Tuolumne Band of the Miwok Indians. These tribes were accustomed to coexisting and often traded with each other. Oak trees were depended upon for food, with acorns from black oak trees providing a substantial part of a family's diet. Acorns were gathered in the autumn, dried, and stored until needed in the chukcha, which served as a pantry and had a sloped roof to manage rain and snow. In particularly good harvests, each family might collect and store about 2,000 pounds of acorns for use over the next several years. When ready to use, the acorns were typically cracked open and pounded into a fine flour in order to make acorn mush. Creek dogwood was used to make baskets, and pine or cedar trees were used to construct housing. A cedar bark home needed old-growth cedar trees, which had been dead for at least 2 years, as that amount of time allowed for the bark to loosen. When miners, ranchers, and homesteaders made their way here in the California Gold Rush of 1849, many indigenous people were killed or forced away from their homes. Homes were destroyed, food sources depleted, many starved to death. The children were often sent to boarding schools for cultural assimilation. In 1851, a band of volunteers formed the Mariposa Battalion, sanctioned by the state of California to rid the area of the perceived threat of Indians. By 1910, over 90% of the original Ahwahnee inhabitants were dead or missing. Descendants of those who survived lived both nearby and are scattered throughout the world. In 1990, over 400 Indian people resided in Mariposa County and 500 in Tuolumne County, which is 1% of the population there. Today, tribal members continue the stewardship traditions of their ancestors, particularly with controlled burns to help keep the forest floor healthy. All 7 tribes work together with the National Park Service to provide care for their homeland. Liz Williams, Yosemite's cultural anthropologist and tribal liaison, says that the relationship between the park and the tribes is about taking a collaborative approach to caring for natural and cultural resources. We have a lot to learn and a lot of work ahead of us, she says. As we reflect on the theme of trust this week, may we acknowledge the harm white culture and the church has done to both people and lands in the past. May we rededicate ourselves to justice for all and care for the people and lands we have left, so that we might truly practice love to all of our neighbors and live in balance with all of creation.